When most people think of Huey Freeman from the Boondocks, they picture a 10-year-old revolutionary, a kid with a bookshelf full of Malcolm X, Che Guevara, and Sun Tzu, forever warning his family and community about conspiracies, government corruption, and cultural traps. But if you dig deeper, Huey's lessons actually go beyond politics and protest. The real thread tying his worldview together is economics. Beneath the surface of his fiery speeches and survival codes, Huey was quietly acting like a financial strategist. Yes, he warned us about the government and the media, but what many people didn't notice is that he also exposed consumerism, debt, and short-term thinking as the traps that kept people broke. The brilliance of the show is that we laughed at him for being paranoid, but in reality, he was teaching wealth protection in disguise. So in this video, we're breaking down how Huey Freeman's so-called radical outlook was actually a blueprint for financial survival, and how this 10-year-old revolutionary may actually be a financial strategist in disguise. Hit subscribe if you enjoy media breakdowns such as this one, and let's get started. One of the clearest examples of Huey's financial lens actually appears in Season 4, Episode 2, Good Times. In this episode, Robert Freeman, better known as Granddad, is living well beyond his means. He spends recklessly, maxes out credit cards, and ignores the reality of his bills piling up. When the debts finally catch up to him, his house is repossessed and his back is against the wall. That's when Ed Wunkler II, the ruthless loan shark, shows up with what looks like a lifeline but is really a trap. A personal loan with a jaw-dropping 150% interest rate. Granddad, desperate to keep his lifestyle, signs the deal without hesitation. Very quickly, it snowballs into catastrophe. The Freemans lose their home, Robert is forced to work off the debt through degrading labor, and even Huey and Riley are pulled into the mess. What should have been just Granddad's problem becomes the family's crisis. When Huey looks at the situation, he calls it what it really is: slavery. Not in chains and fields, but in contracts and debt. And he's right. The episode ends with the Freemans trapped in a modern form of bondage, enslaved not by force, but by signatures on paper. The brilliance of this storyline is how it satirizes a real system that devastates households across America. Predatory lending, payday loans, and exploitative mortgages function exactly like Wunkler's contract. They're marketed as solutions, but in reality, they're designed to trap people in cycles of repayment that they can never escape. Take payday loans, for example. They often carry interest rates exceeding 400% annually, and many borrowers end up taking out new loans just to pay off the old ones. Instead of offering stability, they lock families into an endless treadmill of debt. Huey, at 10 years old, sees this dynamic immediately. He doesn't waste time blaming just Robert's poor judgment, even though that's part of the problem. He sees the bigger picture. Exploitation thrives when people are desperate and uninformed. Debt isn't just a private mistake. It's a system of control that robs entire communities of freedom. That's why he calls it slavery. The labor might not be in fields, but it still strips people of autonomy, dignity, and opportunity. Now, Huey's financial awareness wasn't limited to contracts and loans. He also had a sharp eye for how money can distract from principle. That comes into focus in Season 2, Episode 11, The S-Word. The episode begins when Riley's white teacher calls him the N-word during class, sparking outrage. For most families, this would be a breaking point, a chance to demand accountability and highlight the deeper problem of racism in schools. But for Granddad, it's a payday opportunity. Instead of centering Riley's dignity, Robert dreams about restitution. He links up with Reverend Rollo Goodlove, a flashy preacher who smells profit in every controversy. Together, they march into the spotlight, holding press conferences and making TV appearances. Huey is the lone voice of reason. He tells Granddad clearly that what they're doing is rooted in selfish motives. Huey sees that the lawsuit and the media circus aren't going to bring real change. They're just another hustle. And he's proven right. While Goodlove basks in the cameras, The real issue about how a teacher could casually use a racial slur gets buried. When the school board finally rules, Riley's teacher isn't fired, just suspended with sensitivity training, and the Freeman family gets no payout. The protest fizzles and nothing meaningful changes. The satire hits hard, but Huey's role is what makes the episode more than comedy. At 10 years old, he recognizes a trap that's as dangerous as debt: the tendency to chase quick rewards instead of lasting solutions. For Huey, the problem isn't only the teacher's racism, it's how easily people sell out the fight for dignity when money's on the table. This storyline reflects a broader truth about consumer culture and distraction in real life. Just as Granddad prioritized a settlement check over Riley's dignity, society often focuses on surface-level gains instead of structural reform. Corporations sponsor diversity campaigns without changing hiring practices. Politicians make symbolic gestures without addressing systemic inequality. Communities rally around scandals, then move on when no money or spotlight remains. The fight becomes a performance, not a transformation. Huey's perspective cuts through this cycle. He knows that chasing a payout means giving up leverage. He knows that real freedom can't come from cashing in pain. In fact, Huey often critiques consumerism as the ultimate trap. It keeps people chasing status, comfort, and visibility, while the underlying systems of inequality remain untouched. His frustration in this episode isn't just about Granddad's greed. It's about how easily the bigger picture is lost. Now, if Granddad symbolized bad financial decisions, Riley embodied short-term clout chasing. 2 episodes highlight this dynamic perfectly, and in both cases, Huey stands as the voice of discipline and foresight. In Season 1, Episode 11, Let's Nab Oprah, Riley links up with Ed Wunkler, the Third and Gin Rummy, in their harebrained scheme to kidnap Oprah Winfrey. To Riley, it's not about justice or principle. It's about fast money and the thrill of being part of something big. He eagerly plays lookout, trying to prove his worth to Ed and Rummy, even as the plan spirals out of control. They botch the kidnapping, accidentally snatch Maya Angelou, and then pivot to an even dumber idea of breaking into Oprah's studio. Huey, meanwhile, immediately recognizes the stupidity and danger of the entire plot. He tries to stop Riley, warns him about the company he's keeping, and even ends up clashing with Bushido Brown, Oprah's legendary bodyguard, in his attempt to prevent disaster. The contrast couldn't be clearer. Riley's obsession with quick wins blinds him to consequences, while Huey shoulders the burden of cleaning up the chaos. The same pattern repeats, but on a bigger scale, in Season 3, Episode 7, The Fundraiser. This time, Riley starts his own candy empire, after realizing how much money is floating around in school fundraisers. At first it looks harmless, but soon it morphs into a full-blown criminal enterprise. He recruits classmates, pockets all the profits, and runs his business with the bravado of a wannabe Scarface. He even sets up shop in a luxury hotel suite, throwing money around to keep everyone loyal. Huey, however, sees through it all. He warns Riley that the financial operation is reckless and dangerous, but Riley brushes him off, high on power and short-term gains. Eventually, the empire collapses, just as Huey predicted. Riley sparks a turf war with the official chocolate company, gets caught between mobsters and the FBI, and ends up right back where he started, broke and embarrassed. The only thing that saves him from death is the bulletproof vest Huey insisted he wear. What ties these episodes together is the clash between Riley's obsession with instant gratification and Huey's insistence on long-term vision. Riley wants fast money, fast power, and fast respect, even if it's built on shaky ground. Huey understands that without structure, patience, and planning, those victories collapse under their own weight. It's not just a sibling rivalry, it's a lesson about financial discipline. Riley mirrors real-world traps, lottery tickets, get-rich-quick schemes, scams, and reckless hustles that promise the world but deliver only ruin. Huey, in contrast, embodies the principle of delayed gratification, the cornerstone of wealth building. He knows that freedom comes not from flashy wins, but from consistent strategy. In both episodes, Huey plays the strategist no one listens to. He isn't loud or flashy, but his perspective is the one that would have kept Riley out of danger. And that's the brilliance of the Boondocks. Through comedy and chaos, Huey emerges as the figure reminding us that without patience and discipline, wealth and freedom are impossible. But Huey's true mission was also bigger than individual survival. He wanted to protect his community from falling into the same cycles again and again. And Season 1, Episode 10, The Edis, is one of the clearest examples of how he tried to do that. The episode begins innocently enough with Granddad cooking dinner for the family, the Dubois, and Ed Wunkler. The meal, Granddad's pork swine delight, is delicious, but loaded with fat, sugar, and pork. Everyone at the table, except Huey, falls into a food coma after devouring the dishes. Huey is disgusted. He argues that the food is unhealthy and dangerous, but no one listens.
Ed Wunkler, thrilled by how addictive the meal is, offers Granddad the opportunity to open a restaurant. For Robert, it's a dream come true. Success, validation, and money all in one shot. For Huey, it's a disaster waiting to happen. From the start, Huey is the only one thinking long-term. He sees the bigger picture, that feeding the community addictive, unhealthy food isn't just bad for their health. It creates dependency, lowers productivity, and degrades the entire neighborhood. When Granddad and Wunkler transform a health food store into a soul food restaurant, Huey openly warns that it will destroy more than it builds. He knows that Wunkler isn't offering an opportunity. He's setting a trap. Sure enough, the restaurant becomes a smash hit, but the costs pile up immediately. Customers gorge themselves to the point of collapse. Riley nearly passes out from eating the Luther, a burger made with 2 glazed donuts and a pound of beef, and the neighborhood falls deeper into chaos. Huey tries every tactic to stop the madness. He protests outside the restaurant, tries to dissuade customers, and even works inside when Granddad forces him to. Still, no one listens. The community chooses instant pleasure over sustainability, and Granddad chooses pride and profit over responsibility. In the end, the consequences Huey predicted come true. Customers suffer health problems. A lawsuit shuts the restaurant down, and Wunkler gets exactly what he wanted all along: the chance to buy and repurpose Meadowlark Park at a bargain. What makes Huey central here is that he isn't just nagging about food. He's diagnosing a system of exploitation. He understands that schemes disguised as opportunities often target vulnerable communities. Wunkler knew the food would make people sick and desperate, but he also knew it would keep them coming back. Granddad thought he was building wealth, but in reality, he was helping someone else strip the community of both health and property. Huey was the only one who connected those dots. The satire is biting because it mirrors real life. Fast food chains flood low-income neighborhoods with cheap, unhealthy meals, while grocery stores and health food options are scarce. Predatory businesses profit from addiction and short-term satisfaction, while long-term costs, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and poverty fall on families. In many ways, he was less a revolutionary in the streets and more a strategist for wealth and survival. A 10-year-old teaching lessons most adults still struggle to learn. And if you take him seriously, Huey's blueprint still holds true today. The same cycles Huey warned against in the Boondocks are alive in the real world. Predatory lending has evolved into payday loans, buy now, pay later apps, and subprime credit traps. Consumerism still seduces people into chasing appearances instead of building stability, fueling debt while corporations profit. And unhealthy business models, whether in fast food, gambling, or get-rich-quick hustles, continue to strip wealth and health from the same communities Huey tried to protect on screen. Huey's clarity that survival requires discipline, patience, and resistance to exploitation remains just as relevant now as when Aaron Magruder first put him on screen. If we don't take these warnings seriously, we risk repeating the same mistakes that kept the Freemans trapped.
But if we do, we can turn satire into strategy and entertainment into education. If you got value from this breakdown, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next deep dive. Here at Black Wealth Uncut, we uncover the lessons hiding in our culture, our history, and even in our favorite shows. Watch more of our videos to see how the stories we consume reveal the strategies we need to survive and build wealth today. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.